All right, let's get it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. All right, it is the 3rd anniversary of Indisputable, and so production said, let's do something nice. Let's bring on your friend, conservative Republican talk show host of WSB, the Shelley Wynter Show. Let's bring on Shelley Wynter. Let's just talk about your friendship. I said, producers, I thought y'all wanted to do something nice. Shelley Wynter, ladies and gentlemen. All right. How you doing, brother?
I'm wonderful, sir. Happy anniversary. 3 years is a long time, and that's a good run. You're having a good run, and I'm very proud of you, brother.
Thank you, dear brother. Very proud of you as well. I'm not proud of your talking points, but I'm proud of you as a human being. The Jesus in me, brother, still loves the Jesus in you. Let's just put it that way.
All right.
Let me ask you, man, because when my producer,
the Allah in me loves the Allah in you.
Amen. All of it works. When my producer said, well, let's talk about y'all friendship. How in the world did y'all become friends when you all politically disagree on everything? And man, I had to really think about it because it's kind of organic how it happened. I couldn't really pinpoint like when we became friends. I remember meeting you at a campaign event years ago. And I think at this time I was the director and chief strategist for the state Democratic Party at that time. So we were both involved in electioneering, politics, campaign strategy, et cetera. Who were you working for at that time, Shelley? Do you remember?
I believe I had been fired by 1380 at that time. So
yes, I don't know if you wanted to bring that up, but
of course, correct.
Yeah. And after they fired you,
it's public record. Yeah, it's public record.
They sure did. Now we're #1 show. So
but I'm on a bigger station.
you actually are on a bigger station, but I'm still #1. All right, so the dynamics of politics, like you were always a conservative. So I need people to understand the context. Even though you were on a black radio station, you were a conservative. You had conservative policies and conservative ideology. And you did well, dear brother. You obviously argued with some people, but hell, I argue with people. I argue with conservatives often. You argue with those that were a little more left-leaning to your policies, but it made for good radio. Explain the friction, the requirement of friction, and how that friction to you, in your opinion, created some of the legacy that you have now in the conservative realm.
I think, I was on CNN years ago. Let me start here. As a conservative on that station, I was actually one of the first people in 2007 when I was on the air that said Barack Obama was going to be the next president. And a lot of the friction I got, interestingly enough, was from the African-American listeners of that station who said I was setting black people up so America would never elect a black man. And so interestingly enough, the friction that I first started getting was because I liked Obama and I supported Obama on a black station. And it wasn't that they didn't like Obama, it's just that no one believed that back then that he could possibly win.
And I want to provide a little more context because during that time, this was before I was in radio myself, but I remember just politics-wise, all of the civil rights leaders seemingly supported Clinton. And then
with the exception of Reverend Lowry.
With the exception of Dr. Joseph Lowry, that is correct. And so there was this sentiment that propping up Obama, Senator Obama at that time, whom I worked for, was going to somehow discredit the overall seriousness of the Democratic nominee, who would eventually be Hillary Clinton anyway. So they just made these assumptions about President Obama. So I just want to make sure people understood that context.
Absolutely.
That you were sharing.
And what's interesting, just to go a step further, it also tells us that sometimes our leadership can be wrong. And that the people have an opportunity to voice their opinions, which they did in that election. But I was on a radio and got let go from that station. Interestingly enough, because of the civil rights leaders in Atlanta. But neither here nor there. And also, myself, my personality and everything like that. But the way we became friends was when you got on to 1380. You invited me on the show a few times when you were on there, and I always appreciated that. And then I met your family. We had many of the same friends in the city of Atlanta. And even though we disagreed politically, we had the same goals and aspirations for our people, which was just simply getting the things and the policies that we knew needed to help us move forward as a culture.
Yeah, I agree. And many times our politics, the difference or differences in our politics, it was kind of the traditional dynamics where we disagreed on methodology while agreeing on eventual outcome. Now, some of that is very different now in the political conversation, but you and I always kept that focus. And we share common friends, like Killer Mike is a friend of mine and a friend of yours. We also shared common ideology as it relates to transparency. So when there are local elections, you helped organize local elections for me to come and moderate those local elections, because you knew if I'm there as a moderator, you're going to have a transparent and vigorous debate of issues, right? So we combined there, and then we combined obviously on our youth advocacy for Atlanta youth and mentorship. So those are the things that define us inside of politics and inside of character as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's the most important thing. I think what people have to recognize is I tell people all the time, jokingly, but kind of just to make a point, is that I'm a Giant fan in football. The team I love are the New York Giants. I hate Dallas fans. But at the end of the day, I can't hate you because you're a Democrat. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I just think that we need to get away from that, because the people at the top, they actually want us to be that way. Because if we can work together, you and I, we can get things done for the community that we can't get done if we're busy fighting each other.
Very well said. I want to bring up something that happened.
I don't really hate Dallas Cowboy fans. I just don't like them.
We understand that. So I want to bring up something that happened one day, man. And like people really thought I was going to be like hyper upset. And you and I actually talked after the show. You called my program one day, and you had said something on social media. I remember now. I did a gang peace treaty. That's what I did. And I brought together rival gangs in Atlanta. We were having a lot of gang conflict, a lot of shootings, and a child had been shot and killed in one of these shootouts some months prior at Dunbar Park. And so I got with Rick Ross and a few others locally, and I organized a rally where we literally sat down with them. It was packed, and signed a peace treaty so that this wouldn't happen again. Now, out of that, we had elected officials from the city of Atlanta, Felicia Morcane. We had Chief Judge Kirk and a few others, people that would not normally be in these spaces, were in these spaces, right? And so we posted some of this on social media. We could not get the press to cover it, but if somebody would have shot somebody, press would have been all over it. Put it on social media. You made a comment that was like one of those backhanded compliments, I thought. You made a comment that said something like, "Good job, but it'll be better if we didn't have gangs at all," right?
Right.
Okay, and so I decided to take up my airtime that morning on the show, and I talked about you for about 2 hours. Right. And then you finally called the program, and you voiced your position, and we were going back and forth, and you then got really upset, dropped the F-bomb, and hung up, and that's when the friendship was solidified.
Absolutely. No, I remember that. And sometimes, it's interesting, Rashad. Sometimes social media and sometimes, I type things sometime and erase them. Because sometimes social media is kind of like you jumping out there and saying something just top of mind, you know what I mean? And you wouldn't do that because usually when you see or read something, you're in the privacy of your own home or on your phone. You might think something, but you won't share it because there's no one to share it to necessarily. And what social media has allowed you to do is share these things that pop up into your head in real time. And I think that was one of those times where it didn't really necessitate any kind of comment is, hey, can we do another one? Can we keep doing this? Can we keep running, can we keep doing this? Can we keep on doing this? And so I think that was one of those times.
Yeah, and I got to say this, man, some of your redeeming moments publicly to those who are just very, very hardcore against your ideology like myself is when you're able to make points that your typical conservative radio host would never try to make. And you have done things where you brought Senator Jon Ossoff, who's a dear friend of mine. He comes on my show once a month. He comes on my radio show once a month. He was my friend before he even thought about running for the US Senate. But he comes on your program, you give him a fair opportunity, and you also provided some significant support in one of his campaigns because of principle. It was a principle for you. And those are nuances, dear brother, that we don't see much in conservative landscapes anymore. I think the only other person that I would say does that is Armstrong Williams. The only other person I know who does that. So I'm going to pose this challenging question to you as we part. It seems as if people inside of our political reality are less and less nuanced and more polarized. So moves like that are becoming more rare by the moment. What say you?
I think you're right. I get attacked by Democrats who disagree with me vehemently. I'm now being attacked by what so-called or self-described patriots, which I have no idea what that means because I think we all love our country in some way, shape, or form. And then sometimes I say things where the establishment, quote unquote, may disagree with me. Yep. I see it. A friend of mine said to me, if you're being fired upon by all sides, then you're over the target. And so that's the way I see it. But I think really as the goal should be, if we're given this blessing, if we're blessed to be given this opportunity to share our opinions to people on a large scale, I believe the responsibility is to try our best to bring people together. We're not going to agree on everything, but we don't have to dislike each other, call each other names. When I liked Barack Obama and the entire that audience 1380 did not agree with me, I knew why they didn't. Reverend Lowry once told me, we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable. And that's, I think, really our goal and our responsibility as media people. And my feeling is if people want partisan divide, I can't do that. I have to just share my opinion. Sometimes you're going to agree, sometimes you're going to disagree. Yesterday was D-Day. All of media celebrated D-Day. I celebrated the 320th barrage balloon regiment that stormed D-Day as African Americans. I didn't do that because necessarily I was trying to be Mr. Pro-Black or anything else. I did that because I know my audience had never heard of this regiment that was all African American that stormed D-Day on June 6th. And I did it as an educational manner and to teach people, because I didn't know that this regiment existed, and I'm fairly well read. And so that's why I did it. And I think that's what our responsibility is, to bring people together, let people on both sides know that there are things happening that they can get involved with, or things happening that they may not have known, at historical things that they may not have known about.
There you go, man. The push and pull of having nuanced individual experiences, exposure, and environments. We all come together collectively to share. We don't have to always agree, but we should always be open and tolerable to respect the person next to us. Dear brother, I appreciate all that you do. We'll debate and get mad at each other next time, man. This is the 30th anniversary. Thank you for being part of the tapestry of Indisputable.
That's congratulations again. And you, I hope we don't ever get into a fist fight, because that ring you got on will knock my tooth out.
Yeah,
that is a huge ring you rocking it, brother.
It is, but I don't need the ring to do that, brother.
And you keep waving it.
Yeah, I don't need the ring to do that to you, bro. Thank you, man. I appreciate you being on the show.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.